Welcome to another fantastic episode of the Accounting Profits and Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Louie Prosperi. We've got an amazing guest joining us today, someone who's made a significant impact in tax and accounting education, Jasen Stine from Intuit Accountants. And Jasen is also a co-host of the fantastic AccounTrends podcast. Please join me in welcoming Jasen Stine to the program. Jasen, it's great to have you here.
Glad to be here, Louie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's one of the interviews that I'm dying to get a hold of because I wanted to know more about what you think with regards to tax advisory. Because I know with Intuit and the other projects that you're running, it's a big thing that you're doing right now recently. So fill us in a little bit about what's coming up next for you.
Yeah, it's like all I talk about anymore because it's just such an important focus for our profession. And, you know, when I think about I've been around 25 years in this profession. We've been talking about advisory services for just as long, if not longer. I mean, Ron Baker's been talking about value pricing since the 80s, right? This is not a new conversation that we're having. The interesting thing, though, is that the tides are shifting and everybody's seeing it. And so people are putting an increased focus on it, but they're still not sure what it is. And basically, we at Intuit, we defined advisory services as essentially a proactive business model where the structure of the relationship is centered around the relationship and the growth for the client versus focusing on this traditional transactional work that we've been doing forever in our profession, which is produce tax returns and clean books, right? Which nobody cares about, by the way. Which consumers and small businesses are telling us is that they want their accountants to be bringing more to the table, to be bringing that proactive perspective to the table. And the pros out there are saying, great, some of them are ready, some of them aren't. That's okay. They'll get there in their time. But they're like, where do I start? I don't know where to start. And I mean, I hear that so many times, and we've learned a lot about what is keeping people from doing that by studying both the firms that are already doing it in this space and the firms that aren't. But we can start with a conversation around, okay, forget all of the ambiguous advisory conversations we've been having. How about we just start with tax advisory? Take the tax return data, and we know that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of strategies that we can use to advise our clients and then build a business model around that. So that's kind of the summation of the story there. But we can certainly talk about, there's so much more to unpack.
Well, that's great because you're right. We've been talking about advisory services almost since the profession began, let's be honest, right? Much more than just doing the work, the technical part. And I agree with you. The customer, at the end of the day, the advisory is where they really want to be with you. I mean, they know you have to do the work and the compliance, but the advisory is where they feel they get the most value. So let's really focus on tax. One of the key cores is education, right? I mean,
right.
Tax advisory, just like any other type of thing, there has to be an educational component to it. And what do you think, where can someone go with regards to education? What's the thing with regards to education? What should they learn beyond how to do the compliance?
Yeah, I love that question, Louie, because it's true. Education is massively important to this, more so than I've seen in anything else in my career. I mean, education is the hallmark of our profession anyway, right? It is the foundation. It's how you start, right? Especially if you're credentialed, you're going to go to college to get accounting degree. You're going to sit for your CPA exam or the EA exam. You're going to then go get more education. People who are pro advisors have been taking that training and education for years on end. But this one's a little bit different. And this is part of what I was talking about, where we've been studying people. When we look at firms that are out there doing this work today, they have the majority focus of the firm is leading with tax advisory services. They're centered around that. They have subscription-based billing models in place, and they are actively taking clients, year over year on their adventure in tax savings, right? And everything's structured around that. And then, the compliance work is still there. It's an after the fact, right? Because that's all it's ever been. It's just a report at the end of the day. And so what we found is that those firms have two key kind of components under their belt. And when I talk to firms who are not doing that today, they are missing these things. And that is a strong foundational understanding of the tax strategies that are available. You've got to start there. And when people tell me, like, I don't know where to start, or I'm afraid to start, I don't feel like I have the confidence. This is the thing that I think is underneath that they don't even themselves realize. So folks that are wanting to do this work, go get educated on those foundational strategies, the Augusta rule, the 401k and how to retirement planning. There's a bunch. Those are the kind of common ones. And then of course there's, it gets real complicated at the state levels. But start with the federal level stuff. Go get that foundational knowledge. And then in tandem, you've got to learn how to build a business around this. And it's a very different kind of business that we've been running. And so you've got to be thinking about how to price and package, how to sell, how to convert existing clients over to this business model. And that requires skill sets that we've never really had to have in our profession. And so it's not just building the knowledge and consuming training that helps you understand what those things are, but it's building the skills necessary to be successful. And that includes strategic thinking and selling skills and, process. And then underneath all of that, by the way, you've got to have your firm streamlined because it's currently built to process tax returns, right? And that's still going to be there. But how do we got to get that automated, right? And so we need to learn how to create the capacity in the firm to, be able to go get this additional education, but then also spend the time on this higher value service. And so that's learning the tools and tech that are out there and learning how to leverage them so that you can automate as much as possible to free up that capacity.
Well, you covered like from A to almost to Z, not necessarily. Yeah. We're pretty close, Jason. So I'm going to go back to tax strategies because I really love that part of when you said about education. You're absolutely right. When we talk about tax strategies, that's the educational part where you can learn the tax strategies that you can implement in your own practice and learn the different ones. And you just mentioned a few of them. And I think the other part, and again, it was the automation component, and Intuit has products that allow you to do both, right? Because I think one of your products, I'm not sure if it's being launched. I don't know if I'm letting out a secret or not, but it will have a lot of reports that tie in the tax strategies so that you can do the reports related to tax strategies. Is that correct?
Right.
As well as the automation. Go a little bit through that because integration of automation, I think, is cool, is really important today. And I know I know that thanks to ChatGPT, it's all out there, but AI-empowered tools have been in existence for a little while now, right? Particularly when we talk about automation and report processing. Enlighten us a little bit more about that, because I think that's the area where someone could get educated and really, really take off.
Yeah. And I'll focus, while this isn't really about our products, our products are meant to solve needs that help with the space. I'll use our products as an anchor point to kind of talk about how Intuit is investing in this space. And no, you didn't let any cats out of the bag. We did just launch a new product.
I was worried about that.
Yeah, Intuit Tax Advisor. So it works all the way up into QuickBooks Online, right? So when we think about automation, we think about seamless integration, and we think about how can AI play a role in there. AI doesn't always have to play a role there, but having AI-powered tools working in the background can help it. It helps the solution continue to progress at a faster rate. So, but then there's just, using tools to integrate or produce things in a quicker way. And one of the ways that we've invested in doing this, and this isn't new, but we've gotten a lot better at it, is our QuickBooks Online to our professional tax, specifically our ProConnect Tax Online product. This is where cloud technology comes in. People are like, people who are still on the fence about cloud, let me tell you, if you're not adopting the cloud tech, you're not going to be able to take advantage of the tools of the future as fast as those who have. And so, because the cloud is where you can do that integration, not only within a company's own product line like we've done, but also with like external connections like bank feeds or other simple examples like that, where we're able to just extract the data directly from a financial institution or pull it down from, the paychecks provider or whatever that may look like. All those tools exist only in the cloud. Well, let me take that back. They don't exist only in the cloud, but they work best in the cloud. Yes. And they're designed to automate a set of tasks. And so that's where some of the learning comes in too, is understanding the tools and how they operate. But what I tell everybody is, as an example, if you wanted to take advantage of the tax advisor product, it integrates with our ProConnect Tax Online product too, but it's after the return is produced, or at least last year's return. So you take the QuickBooks Online data, import it into the ProConnect Tax product. If you've got all the mapping set up right, that tax return is going to be practically done when you click that button. And I mean, how magical is that, right? I remember when I started taking, courses on how to do taxes on paper and doing the calculations and everything. The evolution of how technology has helped us, do taxes faster has come leaps and bounds. So then you have all the tax return data in, right? Import whatever else you need. Then you're reviewing and making minor corrections or additions or whatever that may look like that was outside of the books themselves. Now you've got the return in the product, ready to file, off it goes. Then you can then move that into our Intuit Tax Advisor. And what Intuit Tax Advisor does is it looks at the data. And by the way, it integrates with Lacert as well for those that might be watching and also use Lacert, but no other products at this time, only Lacert and ProConnect Tax. But I like the ProConnect Tax example because the automation story, it's much more powerful. And so when you bring that into Intuit Tax Advisor, then that product, and now it actually surprisingly doesn't use AI, at least not right now, but it will look at the tax return data and suggest strategies, specific strategies for that client. So there you go already, helping the tools helping you and guiding you. And then you can remove and add, you can create custom strategies. You take that and you produce this report for the client. The report maps out what the strategy is, how to implement it, and then what the ROI is. And that's the big thing that really helps taxpayers understand and take action, is when they see, I'm going to spend $10 to do this thing and I'm going to get 50 back, right? That's powerful.
So even though it's not AI generated, but the ability to do a what if, because it sounds to me like the strategies, it notices different strategies that you can apply, and then the professional can then look at the different strategies and then determine whether they're reasonable or not. But that's a huge tool rather than having to do each thing manually. So it literally takes the data in, which I love that part. I agree with you. Like right now, what we were defining AI to automate is where I'm looking at. That's the part that I'm talking about more. The ChatGPT right now is just what's out there in the general public. But for tax advisors and for our audience, that's really cool because the automation that you've indicated allows us to free up what normally would be processing the return, right? Sitting there and doing the manual feedback. And now all you're doing now is reviewing and then providing advisory. So the ROI is unique to tax, I think, compared to other types of accounting services, because the ROI is much more definable.
Right.
Right. When you talk about ROI for a bank reconciliation, you're making sure your books are compliant and so forth. There is an ROI on it, but it's very soft, right? It's not,
right.
You can't point something on the balance sheet or income statement and here's your ROI. But with taxes, it's very, very good. So talk a little bit about how advisory in tax is ideally developed for what we call either value-based strategies or subscription strategies.
Right.
Which is what I've been professing, and you mentioned, Ron, is disengaging the hourly input from the pricing and the value.
Yeah, and I've struggled with this one as of late because people are in different places on their journey with this, and some are just trying to get their head wrapped around the fundamentals of it. Some of them, are ready to kind of go all in. I talked to firms that have started doing this work. They're hiring their clients are hiring them for several $1,000s a month to upwards of $10,000 to $20,000 a month for these advisory services, specifically tax advisory. And of course, that's going to depend on the client situation. But the thing about it is, when you do a tax return, it's an intake process and an output, right? And it's transactional, and so that can lend itself to an hourly billing model. But we've always said, all the experts have always said, even years ago, like, hey, you don't have to do it this way. At least think about a flat fee model or project-based model where you're not limited in the amount that you can earn as a professional by the amount of time that you spend doing something, which, by the way, flies in the face of automation, and it doesn't make sense. Right. But firms are still struggling with it, especially the big firms, because hourly billing is just so deeply ingrained in the way that things are running. And so what I tell people is, look, you don't have to do that. You don't have to get rid of and totally transform your business to be able to start doing this work. And in fact, if that's keeping you from doing it, then don't let that be a factor.
Right. Maybe that makes
right?
sense.
Do an hourly billing model if you need to, right? I would advise you to keep looking at subscription models, keep learning about how to implement them, and eventually get there. But start somewhere. Just start
Yeah.
somewhere. Now, when you think about the work, this is not a once and done work. You don't produce a product, a paper stack of papers, or a balance sheet and a P&L, right? You produce an outcome, and that's vastly different. And that outcome has a continuous line. It doesn't end. It shouldn't end. So that lends itself to a relationship focused business model. You can go learn about lots of different people. Mark Wickersham teaches about these. Ron, multiple others. We have training on it as well. What I always tell people is get your 3 packages and anchor your budget package on the absolute bare minimum you're willing to accept for an ongoing basis. That includes the services that you want to offer, but don't make it so cheap that it's not profitable for you. It has to be profitable. Then you anchor your like a big, huge package and go bold with it. You'd be surprised at what people are willing to pay for when they see the value. And so you get your big, huge package that is like, this is everything. You get access to me. Don't say 24 hours, but you get access to me and my advice all the time and my team. We're going to do your tax. We're going to do the books. We're going to do these advisory services. We're going to have these quarterly meetings. We're going to prepare these things, make that your big and make it big. And then in the middle, which is where the majority of people will purchase the subscription model, make sure that's your most profitable option and most reasonable for you to commit to doing the work. And then you offer that to clients. Now, not everybody even does that. Some people just say, this is the package you're getting. Sign here.
Right.
And they do or don't.
I agree with you. I mean, don't let the business model prevent you from getting into tax advisory, particularly if either you've already been doing the compliance work and you've been doing the work, like doing tax returns. It makes sense for you to go to the next level. And I think if you have not incorporated advisory services into your business model, let's look at the big strategic plan is the services being provided. Advisory is like, it's common sense. I think you should include it. And I loved what you talked about, the educational component. Let's go back to the ROI, because the ROI, return on investment, and risk mitigation. What I love about tax, in particularly tax advisory, is it's prone for you to be outcome oriented, right? I mean, think about it. The outcome, it's not the return, it's what the return allows the person to do. Save money, avoid risks, penalties, reduce future risk, and show them what they can do with their business, right? So talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind, like the return on investment component.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the risk mitigation part too, because forever, our main value that we've been offering is keeping people out of jail, right? Like,
that's a pretty, honestly, that's not a bad thing. I mean, I'll tell you, a lot of business people don't know tax, and the last thing they want to do is go offline on the tax side. So I think that's a high value item, Jason. I think that's
for sure,
very high.
For sure. But at the end of the day, it's also, do you think of it just like food or housing?
Yeah.
Like it's a fundamental need where, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to, and the worst case scenario, fines in jail. There's not an upswing to that. There's not a prospective aspect. Like it's just, okay, that's the minimum, right? Versus this providing real tangible value that results in all the things that you just talked about. A better life, achieving goals and dreams, right? That's what this should be about. And that's what we need to be focusing on. That's where it needs to start, is a conversation with clients about, hey, where are you going with this? Is this, are you trying to grow? Let's talk about your hopes, goals, and dreams, and then let's build plans to help you achieve that.
Right.
And that's where the power of this comes into play.
And again, like I'm going to go back to the advisory and the tax. It literally leads you into those other aspects, right? Because when you look at risk mitigation, you're talking about what are they doing next year? What's the future growth of the company? Because you always have to worry about tax, no matter what you do. At the end of the day, the tax requirements are always going to be there. So
Sure.
You start off with the tax and you end up with quality of life and outcomes. So I love how you position that, because, and here's the interesting thing, and that's why I really wanted to talk to you, Jason, about tax advisory, is that tax advisory leads you into advisory of the entire business.
Right. It's a great place to start. And one more thing I want to add, and then I think we're running out of time, is we have a massive staffing crisis in our profession. We have a staffing crisis in general, but it's even worse in our profession. And it's because of the way that we've been doing things. People don't want to come into an industry where it's expected that they're going to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, completely off on the work-life balance. And then, by the way, it's entering data and producing tax returns. That is not attractive to the next generation of our workforce coming in. And so people that are new to the, like, who are starting their own firms, or are coming in, joining existing firms, they want work that has an impact on people's lives. Yeah. And this is exactly that. And so it's not going to get any better. We're not going to have a sudden influx of people wanting to be bookkeepers or tax preparers. We're dealing with a generational paradigm shift.
And they want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves, right? That's the thing you keep hearing about. So it makes perfect sense. Really, that's what at the end of the day, that's what professionals are doing in our industry, is helping people build better lives for themselves, right? Building a better quality of life. And linking the work directly to it is great. And I love the advisory component. And I really like the fact that you're looking into the educational component, you're looking at the automation, which kind of ties in, so that it frees up not only the tax preparer, but their team to provide these services. Fantastic, Jason, before we go, is there anything that's coming up in the near future that we should be looking out for?
Yeah, we're investing heavily into education around this, heavily. Over the summer of 2023 here, we're going to be launching a number of different training experiences. We're still like scoping them out and figuring out exactly what they're going to look like, but we are hard at work, and we're going to be delivering on the education that I described early in the right at the beginning of the interview. Right. Helping people understand the strategies and getting deep knowledge about that, and the risk mitigation part, because it's not just like you can consult someone, hey, you're a sole proprietor, you can go to an S corp and take advantage of these tax benefits. But if you don't do the reasonable comp test to make sure that they're paying themselves within the limits that the IRS, that you get them and yourself in a lot of trouble. So take it seriously, and don't just start willy-nilly advising people, because there are watch-outs that you need to be aware of and play a factor in that. And then we're also investing heavily in producing impactful educational experiences that help people build those skills that we talked about to build a business model around this.
Right. Which is great, Jason, because the educational knowledge related to how to provide the advisory is one component, but the business side, that's usually where everybody forgets, right? It's great to know how to do it, but how do you actually build a business around it? And that's a totally different kind. I'm glad that you guys are looking at both angles of that, because you need both to actually produce a successful practice. So that's fantastic. Jason, this was fantastic. I really enjoyed this conversation. I wish we had more time to go on the other components that you talked about, but I wanted to be very narrowly focused on tax advisory today. Jason, if someone wants to get a hold of you or wants more information, where should they go?
Yeah. So as far as getting a hold of me, LinkedIn is probably the best way. I'm posting articles and episodes of our podcast go out there and so forth. You just have to know how to spell my name right. It's Jasenstine. And you'll see me at Training Education Leader at Intuit. And then also for all of our education on our ProConnect website, it's proconnect.intuit.com, where you're learning more about that. And then for like webinars and virtual conferences and things, you'll find everything on the ProConnect website under the Training and Education tab. And then my co-host and I, David Bergstein, on AccounTrends, we're talking about this stuff all the time. I always recommend people subscribe and listen to those episodes. We bring in guests that are experts in this space to really unpack how to tackle this beast. And so just find us AccounTrends. It's one T in the middle, wherever you find your podcasts.
Okay, so AccounTrends, I got it. Instead of two T's, one. Perfect.
Right.
That's perfect. So when you said all of these webinars and stuff, I'm assuming that it's all free, accessible. Is there a subscription plan, or do you have to be part of an advisory group, or is that just everybody?
The training you'll find on our website is all free. It's available to, and you don't even have to be a customer. Anyone is welcome to come take the training.
Thank you, Jason. It was great having you on the show, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks for having me, Louie.
Well, that ends another episode for us today. I want to thank Jason for sharing with us. I want to thank you, the viewer, for joining us, and we hope you found this episode informative and definitely fun. Remember to subscribe to our channel so you'll never miss another update, and always, please, feel free to share your thoughts and feedback in the comment section below. Until next time, stay hydrated, stay curious, and always keep exploring new ideas. Have a great day.